Hello, my name is Joan Stinton, and I'm the curator of the Itasca Historical Depot Museum. We have begun collecting and preserving the memories of Itasca area men and women who served in the military during World War II. The project is titled When Duty Called, and today I have with me Rich Mrugacz, and he served in the European Theater of Action in the Air Force. Hello, Rich.
Hi, Joan.
How
Nice
are you?
to see you.
Nice to see you too. Could you begin by telling us your full name and your birth date and where you grew up?
Sure. My name is Richard Mrugacz, and I was born on October 18th, 1925. I was raised at 524 North Armour Street in Chicago. I was born in-house. My mother had me outside the hospital, and lived there for a lot of years, and was near Grand and Ashland, if anybody's familiar with the area. And from there, I moved to Itasca in 1955, which goes pretty far back when the population was about 250 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And raised my family there, and I moved out of Itasca in 1968 to just an area outside of Route 53, the Ranchettes, and then I moved back into Itasca about 6 years ago from the Ranchettes. I raised a family of 4 children. My wife Vivian and I had 3 sons and a daughter. And they're all doing well. They all have their own homes, and everybody's still going strong. And I'm very proud of all of them because they really are successful in life.
Great. Okay, so you were living in Chicago. You grew up in Chicago. Where were you when the war broke out and when that became an issue in your life?
Well, I think you're referring to Pearl Harbor or something like that?
Sure.
I remember that. It was a Sunday. My mother was preparing dinner, and we got a news bulletin over the radio that Hawaiian Islands were being bombed. And it was just unbelievable, for us to think of anything like that. And then the next day, the President Roosevelt got on the radio and described what was going on. We didn't have video to see any pictures or anything like that, so it was all imagination of, brimstone fires and all that stuff. So it was pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It shook us all up, it really did.
How old were you when that happened?
I was about 17.
Mm-hmm. Were you still in high school?
Yes, I was in high school.
And were you interested in joining up right away, or what happened?
No, we all heard of a draft that was started, and the draft was 18. Anybody approaching 18 had to register, and a lot of things went through your mind. What branch of service would you like to get into, etc. My inclinations, because as a young boy, I used to make a lot of model airplanes, balsa wood, paper, and was really interested in aviation because of Lindbergh flying across the ocean, and there was a lot of stories about airplanes and things like that. So as a young boy, I was very interested in airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I was hoping that I could get into airplanes or some part of the service that had airplanes.
Mm-hmm. So the first thing you had to do was register for the draft.
Right.
And then what happened next?
We received a card to come downtown, take a physical, etc. And my dreams were fulfilled because as I was leaving the building after the physical, which I assumed I was good,
Fit, yes.
and they were going to draft me, some department or so forth. I passed an Air Force recruiting officer, and he was proposing that you could be an air cadet if you passed a test. So I immediately ran into the room and I said, I want to take the test. was come on to become a pilot, all right?
Yeah,
Naturally,
of course, yeah.
you'd want to be a pilot.
Yes.
So I passed the test flying colors, and I had to, what would you say, apply for the Air Force.
Mhm.
So I signed my name to the Air Force. But they couldn't take me because I was underage at that time. So when I became 18, they again called me downtown, took another physical, and I had a sign that I was going to the Air Force and so forth. So I waited for them to call me up.
Mhm.
So from that point on, after I was 18, I was called up to come to Fort Sheridan on a Sunday, I remember, and my uncle had a car, an old Ford, I believe. So my uncle and his wife, my aunt, and my mother, and I drove from Chicago to Fort Sheridan, and it was in the evening, in a winter's day. And they let me out at the gate, and I can imagine my mother just going crazy. I was her only son, only child.
Oh, goodness, yeah.
And it was heartbreaking for me, too, because I'm leaving my real family group, because my aunt was like a second mother to me, and walked down the street to information, and that's where we got set up and went and got our Army clothes and things like that.
So that's when you were actually inducted into
Mhm.
the Air Force. Do you remember anything more about that? Were you...
Well, there was a lot of men crying.
Really?
Because, you know, in the old days, everybody was close to their families, and they were leaving their family group. And you see somebody crying, you know, stop your tears and try to show that you're a man, but you're only a young boy.
A kid, yeah.
And everybody finally settled down and realized what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember anyone you met then?
No,
within-
because they were all just going through the same
Same thing.
tribulations. I was, what's next? Where are we going from here? Or how, you know,
Okay.
etc.
And then how long did you stay at Fort
I was
Sheridan?
just about 3 days.
Uh-huh.
And then they put me on a troop train, and we went to Biloxi, Mississippi. And that was Keesler Field in Biloxi, Mississippi. I visited Biloxi not too long ago. I drove up to the area where we had basic training, and that area was just tents. Now there's big brick buildings in that same area, and I'm familiar with the area because it had a railroad tracks right along the area where we were living in tents. And it was really something to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I went through basic training. It was just like an infantryman. The Air Force didn't do anything different.
Mm-hmm.
Long hikes, 20-mile hikes, some of them, physical education and physical exercises and so forth. But it was very cold in Mississippi at that time. It was January, February, and rainy. And living in just a tent without heat, it was kind of hard on a lot of men.
Sure.
And everybody was coming down with colds and things like that. And in those days, you'd go to the infirmary and get an aspirin, that was it. And they treated like you want to get out of some work, like KP or things like that.
I
and
see. They made you
you're
feel
fainting,
like,
you're sick, you know.
Yeah, they made you feel guilty about
Right.
it.
And the KP was very difficult. Everybody took a turn at KP, washing pots and pans and cleaning the mess hall and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a grind. You'd work 12 hours a day there,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody rotated. And you want to go further down the line then?
Oh, yes. So then when you finished basic training,
Yeah, I
then you
think that
had...
was, I can't remember how long. It had to be over a month.
Mm-hmm.
So then they sent me to Tyndall Field, Florida, which was well, at Keesler, they gave us further tests for to be a pilot. They said that. It was mostly in the area of trigonometry. And I didn't have trigonometry in high school yet. I had just solid geometry and etc. I didn't get to that stage yet of high school math. And naturally, it was 1, 2, 3, and it's like you didn't pass, so you're going to gunnery school.
Okay.
Or, I think you had an option, radio school or gunnery school. So I opted for gunnery school, and they sent me to Tyndall Field, Florida, which was a training center for gunners. And you had to learn the nomenclatures of the 50 caliber machine guns and your turrets. These are turrets on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
That would turn and revolve and aim your guns and so forth. They're all hydraulically operated except the waist guns, which were manual. The waist guns were out these open windows all the time. And you had to take them apart and put them together and make sure there's headspace so that once you shoot it, it would ricochet back and put the next slug in there. 50 caliber guns, the head of the 50 caliber is about that tall, and I would say it's at least this round.
Really? Wow.
Just the bullet portion of the 50 caliber.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd fly with training people, and shooting a gun from a moving plane, you have to aim differently than if you're standing still and shooting at a moving target. If you shot in front of your plane, you could aim right at the target in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as it went to a 90-degree or 45-degree angle, you had to aim behind him. His angle, if he's coming from this direction, you'd have to aim over here because you're moving and the trajectory will reach him there.
Uh-huh.
So that was hard to understand at first, but after quite a bit of training, we could do that.
And when you trained, some of it was classroom training, but was some of it actually in planes up in the air?
Yes, it took us up in the air, and a plane flew by with a sleeve, and you'd shoot at the sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
I heard some planes were shot down.
Oh, no.
Oh, sure.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, in combat, there was a lot of bullets flying around, you know, at your own people. Because you get so excited, you know, trying to aim your gun at whoever's you're shooting at, or what, and all of a sudden one of your planes might come into view because of formation flying.
I see.
I'll talk about that a little later.
Okay, yeah.
So after gunnery school, I think I went home for a week furlough. Yeah, just about a week. And
so this was in about 1942 then? You were
no,
actually?
this is in 1944.
We were in 19, okay.
Yeah. Yes, 1944.
Okay.
And just visited and said goodbye to everybody because I knew I was going to be assigned to a crew, and then we would take a training all together as a crew.
Mm-hmm.
And that occurred, and I met my crew in Savannah, Georgia, Chatham Air Force Base. It was right outside of Savannah. I did take a trip to Savannah, and I talked to the natives, and they never heard of the place.
Oh, really?
Just a few years ago.
So it's gone.
Well, they don't know about the name of Chatham Field. And I did talk to a historian, and I guess she wasn't too historic because she was a bit older, my age or so, and she still didn't know exactly where it was, but then she thought of it as another name.
Mm-hmm.
There is a field there, and I thought it would be the major airport for Savannah, Chatham Field, but it isn't.
I see.
So we took a lot of training together as a crew. And
now, is this a picture of that crew here?
yes, this is a picture of the crew.
All right.
And this was my pilot. Melvin Wagner. This is my co-pilot, Gerald Kogelschatz. This is the bombardier Clarence Knopf. We have two Germans here, you notice. And we have a navigator, Becker, Harold. His name was Harold Becker. This was our head engineer, Roy Firestone. This was our radio man, Harold Igo. This was a gunner, Albert Reese. This is myself. Here's another gunner, Robert Martin. He was the ball gunner. And Charlie McComas was the tail gunner. And two of these gentlemen received the Purple Heart. Albert Reese, who was hit in the arm with a piece of shrapnel. And Martin received a wound in his leg and his calf.
Mm-hmm. So you stayed with this crew for the whole time that you were there?
So we took our training there, and it was mostly for the pilots and co-pilots, and we did some practicing with shooting guns and so forth.
Okay. What kind of a gunner were you?
I was assigned to the Martin turret, which is on top of the plane.
Mm-hmm.
It has two 50 caliber guns, and it rotates. And through practice, somebody finally invented a thing that would make, when you aim the gun at the tail, it wouldn't hit the tail as you're rotating the shooting. So it had some stops, and it sort of checked the gun so it wouldn't shoot if you're aiming at your tail. Because in the heat of combat, you can, you know, just get all goofed up. Or the props, too.
Now, were you by yourself up there? Was there only one?
Yeah.
One gunner up there.
And a lot of times I flew in the waist.
Mm-hmm. So you were familiar with the other guns?
Yeah.
And you could operate
when you went through gunnery school, you had to be familiar with every turret. Mm-hmm. And the worst turret was the ball turret, but I was too small, so I couldn't fit into the ball turret. You had to be a small stature.
Okay.
And it was the weirdest feeling to fly in that ball, because you felt if you got hit or the plane was damaged, you couldn't get out of there.
Yeah.
Where these other turrets, you could, you know, jump out the back and jump out the window or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you met your crew in Georgia, and you worked together here in the U.S.
Right.
Getting used to each other.
Right.
And then what happened?
Then we flew to. Let me review my notes here.
Okay, this is.
I think it's in this catalog here. I forgot where we picked up our new plane.
You got a brand new plane.
Yeah, we got a brand new plane. It came out of Willow Run in Michigan, Ford Company.
And the plane is a
B-24J. That's the plane we picked up. We went to Mitchell Field, New York. That's where we picked up our plane.
Okay.
And we took a flight around New York with the new plane to see how it handled. I guess the pilot and co-pilot
feels, yeah.
has it. Then it wasn't too long. We started a trek across the ocean, and we from Mitchell Field we went to Grenier, New Hampshire, as the first leg. Then we went to Gander Air Force Base in Newfoundland, and we got detained in Newfoundland with weather. And I found that the people over there don't have to heat their water, because the water is coming out of the ground, and there's a lot of volcanic activity.
There's geysers or something there.
Yeah, so all the hot water came right from the geysers.
Mm-hmm.
And we were stuck there for about a week because of bad weather. Then we went to Marrakech, French Morocco. We stayed there for about a couple of weeks and practiced flying and dropping practice bombs and stuff like that. And then we went to El Aouana, Tunisia. Is that Tunisia? Yeah, Tunisia. It's an Arab country. Mm-hmm. And we again practiced some more, and then we finally went to Gioia, Italy. That's where our base was. Okay. In Italy.
Mm-hmm. Did you know ahead of time what kind of action you were going to be in for in Italy?
Sure. Mm-hmm. You you could read all the Army papers and things like that. They tell you what's going on. Stars and Stripes mostly. And where the battles are occurring and so forth. And they just secured the bases in Italy from not Sardinia, I can't think of it, Sicily.
Okay.
After jumping off from Sicily, they went to Italy, and they secured the area below the spur, and that's where the bases were for the airplanes.
Okay.
So they were moving up Italy, and we moved into the fields. But they had to, make the airfields there. And the airfields were constructed out of gravel, mostly the taxi strips, the gravel, and the runway was metal, corrugated metal, sort of with holes in it.
Really?
And it was in one direction, so you never had the ability to go into the wind. Usually planes take off into the wind to give them more lifting power. But the runway was only in one direction. It was, I would say, south to north, if I recall.
So then did you become part of a larger unit, a squadron or something?
Yes, we joined the 456 Bomb Group, and the Bomb Group consisted of 4 squadrons for one airfield. And the squadrons usually put up 10 planes. Most missions, though, we'd put up 50 to 60 planes from our bomb group. Now, there were somewhere around 20, 30 bomb groups there.
20, 30 bomb groups
at least 30
of 50 or 60
planes.
Wow.
And we'd go on a mission, and we'd put up 50 planes. And it was a magnificent thrill. I don't want to go back to the first mission, but after you got used to it, and you're taxiing, and all this dirt and dust is flying, and all these engines are roaring, and you're moving up the taxi strip because we took off one after another. And then we formed a formation. We'd have to fly in circles around the field until all 50 planes joined up. And then we headed over the Alps into Europe.
Wow, I bet that was a thrill.
You can't describe it.
And the noise and the visuals would be amazing.
Because, like I say, the taxi strips are gravel and dust, and it's just blowing all over the place.
And were all the planes, the B-24s, they were all that big?
Oh, yes. All B-24s. And the B-24, I'll give you a little summary of what it did. It consisted of 10 crew members. It had 10 50 caliber machine guns. The maximum bomb load was 8,800 pounds. The maximum speed was 290 miles per hour. The ceiling, our ceiling height would be 28,000 feet. Very seldom we flew at 28,000. Our range was 2,100 miles. And the largest attack force we ever put up in the sky was 1,235 planes.
Wow.
And our commander was Colonel Steed. We called ourselves the Flying Colts. And I flew 233 hours and 50 minutes of actual combat flying time.
And how many missions would that have been?
It was 35 sorties. There's a lot of confusion of people talking about missions and so forth. Well, in the early days, some people got credit for they set a standard of 50 missions. But a lot of missions were counted as 2 if you went to a hard target. You follow?
They were like weighted.
Yeah, they were weighted. But they could get 25 sorties and still get credit for 50 missions. So there's a lot of confusion of people understanding missions and sorties. Sortie is you fly to the target, you do your thing, and come back. That's a sortie.
Okay. So do you remember your very first mission?
Yes, it was to, I think it was, let's see, I'll look it up right here. Just don't want to mistake it. Yeah, it was Geyer Air Force Drome. I think that was in the Balkans. I can't remember exactly what the country it was. Geyer. And our pilots went out on the mission by themselves to get accustomed to what's going to happen. So the pilot, co-pilot, and the officers went on a mission before the rest of the crew went on a mission. So they already had some experience in what to expect. But as in our first mission, you didn't know what to expect. You're looking for fighters, and you're just so nervous and tense. And then all of a sudden we're going on the bomb run, and all of a sudden shells are bursting all over you, and you're cringing, and you're saying your Hail Marys and Our Fathers, because this is it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we swerve off after the bomb run, and you feel a little safe because you dropped the bombs, and now you're going somewhere, but now you got to go back and land and come back in one piece. But there's so many other thrills and worries that go on. The takeoff, for instance. You've got a heavy bomb load, and these runways, with the steel causing friction on the tires, and it takes a long haul for that plane to start down the runway and take off. And at the end of the runway were some olive trees and stuff, and we're just clipping the edges of these olive trees getting up in the air. And then flying around, forming the formations. If you're in the low box, you've got Able, Baker, Easy, Fox, and so forth. If you're in the low box of 10 planes, you're way down at the bottom. These guys may not be high enough, and you're flying around, clipping the, very close to the ground.
Wow.
Until they start climbing and going towards the target.
Well, on that first mission, what was your target for that first mission?
It was an Air Force drone. It was probably a German Air Force fighter base or something like that.
I see.
And they also had a lot of oil in bulk, and so I don't remember exactly what it was.
So you were bombing an airport or
an oil refinery.
Or an oil refinery. And they were shooting back when they went in.
But it wasn't one of our major targets, so you don't realize that. You see one shell burst, you think it's the big war.
Mm-hmm.
But later on, you went to some of these real big targets like Vienna or Munich, where they had somewhere in the area of 550 guns in Vienna shooting at you.
Back at you, yeah.
And those, you shudder. They track you too. They're right next to you, coming right at you.
Mm.
I think after that meeting you had at the library, I made a little statement over there. And as a group, you take off and you fly formations of 10 planes in each box. We call them boxes. So we would have security with all our guns going to the outside in case the fighters attacked us. So we didn't fly level or anything. Every 10 planes was at a different level. And there was 50 or 40 planes in our group. So when we started to the target, we had to all go back into single file because we didn't bomb as a formation. Maybe 3 planes together would bomb as a formation, but all the planes in threesomes would have to follow in order.
Were you all at the same altitude then?
Almost.
Okay, so you were all...
Some were a little higher, some a little lower, but we're all 3 planes abreast going behind each other into the target, because when we spread out with the formation that we're flying to the target, it's for miles, spread out. So you want to put the most bombs in a certain area that you can.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a statement at that meeting. You could see other groups going to the target before you, another 50 planes or maybe 100 planes going there. And that sky over the target is so full of black gun smoke. It looks like a cloud. And then in a distance, these planes are aluminum, are B-24s, and when they get hit and they start to go down, they look like tinfoil from the distance going down. So you could see what's ahead of you, and it's just uneasy feeling.
Oh, yeah.
That you're going to go, you
You're
might be
flying right
alive.
into that, yeah.
Right, and you'd be dead the next minute.
Yeah. Can you describe what it was like being in the plane, who you could see, how you communicated with each other?
Yeah, we had interphones, and well, we had oxygen masks because we always flew above 10,000 feet. And they'd freeze up. We're talking about 60 degrees below zero, 50 degrees below zero. And luckily, on one mission, I want to explain further to you about how we made sure everybody was awake and on alert and so forth. So we had a call arrangement where we call each position and find out how that person's doing. One mission, our ball gunner didn't respond. So I kept calling him a couple of times and there was no answer. So I was at the waist position, that's the center of the plane. And I had to go back. I was over here and I had to go up to this position over here. It looks like a small amount of space, but it was about 10 feet, I would say. So I had to release myself from my station oxygen hose. And I got a portable bottle, which has about 5 minutes of oxygen. Connected that, and I walked back there, and I noticed his ball was down, the guns were down, and he could have, if he could, he would move it so I could crank it up. Well, he wasn't moving it or anything, so I had to use the manual things to crank him up out of the hole. He was extended already.
He was down below
the fuselage. Mm-hmm. Had to crank him up and get the hatch in a position that I could open it from the inside. But it took me longer than 5 minutes, so I had to go back and refill my bottle and come back. So I finally got him up. I opened the hatch, and there he was, almost unconscious. I hit him on the shoulder, no movement whatsoever, and I looked at his oxygen mask, and it was disconnected. So I connected it, then I waited a little while, slapped him on the face, and he revived. So luckily we had that system, because there were people who, their crews didn't check on them, and they came back with dead gunners in the gunner's position.
For a simple thing like the oxygen.
Simple thing like a disconnection.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I got him back, and he closed the hatch, and everything was fine.
Oh, my.
There were other occasions where one time a bomb got stuck in the bomb bay, and I don't know if you've ever been in the B-24. The fuselage is open, and the bomb is hanging, and the pilot asked me to go back and see if I could knock it off, not irregardless of where it's going to go, because it's hanging, and
you couldn't.
If you try to land, it would just fall right out and blow yourself up. So I went back there and I had a parachute on, and the walkway is so narrow. You're getting hooked up with your parachute harness and all that, trying to get there. And it was just a bad solenoid, and I had a tool with me, and I whacked it, and it just went. But the bomb bays were open, I'm saying, But for some reason, I could stand on a 3-story building and look down, and I'll just get all
woozy, huh?
Woozy. But when you're up at 23,000, 30,000, or 27,000, you don't feel it. I used to sit on the outside of the window, just sit there and enjoy myself, and not worry about falling or anything, because you had no fear of that height. But
it's sort of like beyond what you can comprehend. So
right.
Okay. So you could walk around inside the plane. It was difficult, though.
Yeah, because you either had to carry an oxygen bottle, mm-hmm. or you try to move with I had a chest pack, which is a big parachute that comes way out here, and I hooked it on because you want to take it with you. You never know what's going to happen. So you'd have to maneuver through this narrow walkway from the bomb bays to the front of the plane. Here's see the walkway? Mm-hmm. And there's the area right between where the bombs are, and you're walking through to get to the front of the plane. Mm-hmm.
So how many bombs were in there?
Well, it all depends on what type of bombs you're going to carry. They come in 250 pounders, 500 pounders, 1,000 pounders, 2,000 pounders. But like I said, you can carry 8,800 pounds because the engines couldn't lift the plane up beyond that.
So depending on what kind of a target you were going to would be the kind of bombs that you would carry.
We drop a lot of delayed action bombs. Maybe some would blow up in 2 days, some in 1 day, because after you drop all of these bombs and you create damage, say a railroad marshalling yard, they'd be out there fixing up the tracks the next day and building them right back. But when you put these bombs in, which dig into the ground maybe 10 to 15 feet, depending on their weight, they have to dig them up, and they might be in the process of digging them up, and they're exploding.
They would blow up again.
The Germans did the same thing with England and so forth.
Yeah, I remember a program on exploding
There was all
bombs.
types of bombs. There were fragmentation bombs. We used that to strike airfields because they'd explode just above the ground and throw the shrapnel all over. And those were, we must have carried 300 of those bombs because they were small, but they're doing a lot of damage, and they destroy the planes on the ground. It all depends on what targets you're attacking. Most of our missions were at the period that I was in with oil refineries. The attack method was to reduce their oil, because then they couldn't run their tanks, their airplanes, or anything else. And most of their oil was coming out of the Balkans. And Vienna was a big center, oil refinery center. So were a couple of other areas. So we took a lot of trips to Vienna, and I saw a documentary of some of the churches in Vienna that were completely destroyed, but now they're recouped and they look just like they were before the war.
So you were actually bombing cities as well, where there were civilians
present. We'd always probably bomb through observation. We did, radar was in the young infancy at that time. There was a few missions where we bombed through the clouds. You couldn't see the target, and we used the radar. But it was very inaccurate. All you see is white globs. I looked at the radar, and you couldn't tell. Maybe a little whiter blob would be a building, and a darker gray would be something else.
I see.
You really had to be a student. But we all bombed off of the main bombardier.
Which was?
Was out of 10 planes going over.
Oh, okay.
He's on the bomb site, and when he releases, everybody releases. So he's the one that controls the bombing.
Sometimes, so one plane was designated to be that plane, that bombardier.
Of the squadron.
And
once in a while, my pilot and the bombardier would lead the 10 planes too.
Okay. Were you ever in contact with the pilot?
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah, sure. A lot of times, pre-flight, you never, although you're talking about young mechanics, and their training, and at that time was boom, boom, you're a mechanic. So I was a sort of like assistant engineer, and my engineer, we would gas up the planes to make sure we had the amount of gas. We'd make sure that the gas covers were locked and sealed with wire, because of the engines running and the vibrations, if you didn't seal that cap with wire and lock it in place, it would unscrew and all the gas would siphon out the wings.
Oh my gosh.
And things like that. So you're always making sure, and all the wheel chucks and all that stuff is taken care of. They had rudder locks when the plane's on the ground, so it locks the rudder. So you had to remove those and so forth. So you really had to be very diligent. And I learned a lot about airplanes. And I remember I was at this Keesler Field, and there was some, I didn't realize it, but these young pilots were practicing the takeoffs and landings. And I'm over there on the pad, and I'm asking these young guys, take me up, I want to fly in an airplane. Not realizing that these guys are so inexperienced,
Yes.
they can crash up, but that's the way you were when you were young.
Mm-hmm. Are there
But in training, we lost a lot of planes,
Did you?
like Chatham Field.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the upper turret one day, and we were flying formation, and there was 3 planes just above us. We were just below them. And this one plane came across and went under the other plane and chopped them right in half with his props.
Oh, no.
I don't know why or what, and that plane that he chopped in half just went down, but he just lost his props, this pilot, and he landed, but the other plane was lost.
Oh, my gosh.
Just like that. You never know when it's going to go about. And the biggest problems we had going to targets was the weather. You get to the Alps and you meet a front, a cold front with the clouds and going up to 30,000 feet. I remember one time, and again, we didn't have radar and things like that. And the pilot, we went into this cloud bank at the front. It's like a fog. You can't even see your wingtips. And all these planes are in the air, flying very close together. But I imagine the pilots are saying, I'm on a heading this way, degrees, so
Yes.
forth. But you don't know what's going on. And the pilot calls up in the back and he says, look out, make sure you see a plane or something coming at us. And we couldn't even see the wingtips, so what good would that be?
Oh, my goodness.
So we came out of it this one time, and 2 planes came from the left, and they banked. I don't know if they were coming close to us, and my pilot dove. I know that. And when you dive one of these things, it's like a little fighter airplane or something. You can do all these maneuvers. It goes down, and it's hard to pull up. So these 2 planes banked over and went upside down, and they were gone. As soon as they tip over, they're gone.
Gosh.
Yeah, just when coming out of that fog plane.
Oh, dear.
And the pilot says, get your parachute on, when he's diving. So I'm in the waist, and I'm trying to pick up my pack. I couldn't even pull it off the floor. The gravity was so strong, because he was pulling it up. And finally was able to do it, but then we didn't have to bail out or anything. Because I think he was worried that we were going to be hit.
Oh, man, because of all the
The other
dense...
planes coming right at us. Yeah, they just came right out of the fog.
Oh, man.
We hit a clear spot, the front, we passed up the front. But there are a lot of takeoffs. They just wouldn't make it, and crash up. Things like that. Landings, because the plane is damaged so much. It's hard to land, flat tires, engines blown out.
Did you ever have any damage on the plane that you were in?
We had damage every mission.
Every mission?
Yeah, we were hit by those pieces of metal that I showed you. And we used to call our plane the flak magnet.
Oh, really?
It was always patched with these pieces of aluminum all over.
Oh, yeah. So you would land, they would patch up the plane, and you'd take it out again next time?
Unless the engine was wrecked. We flew the same plane for my whole 34 missions.
What was it? Did you
and I
have
was
a name?
waiting, because my pilots had one mission ahead of us. We had to get on another crew for the last mission.
Oh.
We'd call, like, somebody on the crew would be sick, so you could replace them. So I thought I had a thing with the security officer. He was going to alert me to a milk run, which was an easy mission, supposedly. So he talked to me one day. He said, get on tomorrow's mission somehow. So I was a standby. So I went to the briefing, and here is to Vienna, our hardest target. I was so mad, but the mission got washed down because of bad weather. So I didn't talk to him anymore, because he wasn't doing me any favor.
No, he wasn't.
But our plane went on another mission with another crew, and it was shot down. Can you believe that? The first mission with another crew.
They didn't know how to fly your
No,
plane.
it wasn't that. It just got hit by flak.
Wow.
Because I was talking to some other members, and I said, how about our plane? I know it was in the mission. He said, yeah, it was shot down.
Amazing. When you got damage on your plane, Did you just head back right away, or was it
No,
a struggle, or do you have to land somewhere else?
You're already in enemy territory. One mission, we really got beat up bad. We lost an engine. There was a hole in the wing that was like this. I thought we were on fire because the shrapnel hit our oxygen tanks, and it's just a flame in the center portion of the plane. And I said, we're on fire. But it just went out, just as it started.
It was just like a flash.
Flash, you know. And that's when one of our members got wounded in the front of the plane, the front turret. And so we lost the engine and our oxygen. So we had to go down to a level where we're pretty close to the ground, under 10,000 feet or just about there. And we were susceptible to small arms fire now. 20 millimeters and stuff like that. In fact, we went, I don't know why the pilot went right over this airfield, and the 20 millimeters were just flashing, going right at us, but just missing because they were curving, I guess, somehow. And well, we were flying over the Trieste in Yugoslavia. And I'm in the waist, and I'm looking down, and I see 5 flashes. And I called the pilot. I said, "They're shooting at us. You better maneuver your plane somehow, because they track you, you know. And if you keep going the same way, their tracking is following that track." So he believed me, and he turned. Luckily, then all of a sudden, boom, 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 right? You know, the line
where
we
they
were
were.
going.
Yeah.
So you had to be very observant. And I say God gave me the ability to notice things like that. And maybe saved my life and their lives.
Sure. How long was a mission? How many hours?
Well, most of the missions were in the area of 6.5 to 7 hours. But that one to Poland was 9 hours. So you took off from Italy and you flew over the Udine Valley of Italy, and you go over the Alps, and you're already in Austria and parts of Germany and things like that.
Did you ever encounter resistance on the way to the target?
Once we were attacked by Me-210s, but they were shooting cannons, which our 50 millimeter guns would not reach them. And they'd shoot the cannons way out, they'd lob them at us, and then they'd turn off. If they kept coming at us, we would have probably had a couple of shots at them. But that was the only time we were attacked.
So the most dangerous part was getting over the target and then getting back with your injuries.
Your damages and injuries and so forth. Don't forget, if you're wounded in a 6-hour, 7-hour flight, you still have another 4 hours or 3.5 hours to get back to your
home.
base.
Yeah.
The plane is heavily damaged. Like I say, we had to land at Ancona. There was a new British fighter base there with that plane that we got shot up real bad. And it was a very short runway, and the pilot didn't think he could land there without crashing up at the end of the runway, but he did. And that was something else there with these British flyers flying their bullfighters and other planes. They were just having a ball. I talked to them, and they'd do 5-6 sorties a day. They wouldn't even get out of their cockpit. They'd get a cup of tea or something from the ground crew, and the guys would load up the ammunition, and they'd take right off. These were fighter pilots.
They had smaller planes, very maneuverable,
planes, yeah. And then one thing that really got me was I was a staff sergeant, and they treated me like an officer. So when we went to eat dinner, we went to the officers' mess. You know, I never ate in an officer's mess because that was different than non-coms. Anyway, they had these Indians with their turbans serving us during the war. It's unbelievable.
Wow. They still...
Where we had mess kits, we lived in a tent in Italy. My whole career in Italy was in a tent.
So you'd fly all day and then have to sleep in a tent at night?
In a cot, yeah. And our mess was, food was like dehydrated potatoes, dehydrated eggs, nothing too palatable. And,
so they didn't even feed you well.
I didn't smoke at that time, and we get rations of 2 packs of cigarettes a week. So I took them and I traded the Italians for eggs. They had chickens and so forth. And we had a little stove. We took a 55-gallon drum, gasoline drum, and cut it in half. And we made a stove out of that. And we had a 55-gallon tank of 100-octane gasoline with tubes coming to the thing and would drip into a pie plate. And that was our fire and heat.
Oh.
And we had made chimneys out of linings of ammunition containers, which was brass, I believe, yeah. So we formed that into a chimney out the tent. There was a few tents that burned down too.
No, really.
So also, I remember there was no spaghetti in Italy.
No.
Nothing like that. In that area in Italy where I was, it was so backwards. It was unbelievable. Even at that time in the United States, we were so ahead of Europe, except for Germany. I would say Hitler had Germany really moving good with his autobahns and all that stuff. But Italy, they had light bulbs. They were flickering.
Really?
Like those old-fashioned lights.
Yeah.
And no roads. They had all gravel roads. And the Americans came in and right away put some asphalt down and made some big roads there.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to town one day, and I don't know if this is right to say it on TV, but I needed to go to the bathroom. So I was trying to talk Italian. I got to go to latrine or something like that. She points to an area in the house, and there was a wall with a little running channel. And she says, "Here." So I thought, well, that's where you go. So I did my thing. She comes with a bucket of water, whoosh, right out in the street.
Oh.
That's the way they were living.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them burnt branches from olive trees and stuff like that. They were cooking inside their, they were mud houses made out of mud and turned to sort of hard stone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they built their houses.
So you did get a chance to interact with the local people.
Yeah, but there were so many areas out of bounds, you couldn't.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
The only time I really interacted with it, we went to Rome for a rest for a week. We call it a rest camp. After so many missions, you get a week off or so forth. And I got to see St. Peter's and took a tour of Rome, the catacombs, and all the Colosseum and everything else. And it was real good to see all of that.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So then you'd watch the natives, and the biggest shock I got was, I'm a Catholic, I always go to Catholic church, they always had pews. When I got to St. Peter's, there were no pews.
It's just a big open
Just
space.
open space.
Yeah.
So it just shocked me, you know,
Yeah.
because you're so used to it. But I've seen a lot of world things, but I would say St. Peter's has got to be number one on my list. Really have to see it
Mm-hmm.
because
That's
of all
really-
the art and everything else.
Yeah, it's amazing. Where were you when the Normandy invasion took place? You
I was in Italy.
were in Italy
Yeah.
then?
They still didn't invade. They started to think of invading South France and Normandy.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my battles, I received 5 battle stars. Beside, I received the Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters and 5 battle stars.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the Southern France invasion was one of the battles where we bombed the area so the troops could land there in southern France.
So actually you were part of the Normandy invasion. You
Not the Normandy. That's Normandy's
Oh,
from
okay.
England.
But
This
the
was
southern France.
Southern France.
I see.
So they were going 2 directions,
Okay.
from Italy and up there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Italy was a battle going up through the mountains there.
Mm-hmm.
There were quite a few struggles there, Caserta, and I remember that stronghold they had on one of the mountains over there. I forget what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But they couldn't get past that area because the Nazis had the height and they could shoot down at everything.
Oh, yeah.
So they lost a lot of people there, but we kept bombing it and so forth.
So how did the end of the war, how did the news of the end of the war reach you?
Well, I was on a boat coming home from Naples.
So you had finished your missions and
Yeah,
you were on your way home.
I was on a freighter, and I was guarding our own troops who were going to Leavenworth because they were rapists or they murdered our own people and so forth. It was a bunch of MPs, but I was assisting the MPs. And I got my first experience of people never guilty, but they're all going to Leavenworth. But it's always somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
And I also ran into the experience playing baseball at Statesville. And we had dinner with the prisoners. And of course they'd serve you and so forth. And they'd always have a story they weren't guilty to.
Yeah. Well, when you got home, you got released from the service. Then what?
I went back to finish high school.
Did you? Oh, you hadn't finished high school.
I didn't finish high school. I finished high school, and at the same time, my mother went into the tavern business.
Okay.
So I assisted her with that.
And then did you take advantage of the GI Bill?
Well, that was GI Bill.
Oh,
because I went
okay.
to Catholic high school.
Okay.
And,
But did you go on to college at all with
No, I
it?
took some individual courses later, which were by the GI Bill.
Okay.
But they were constructive to my jobs and so forth.
Okay. And then you settled down and started
Yeah,
a
then
family.
everything happened at one time. I got a job with the Gillette company, and I met my wife, and I was working for Gillette for almost 40 years, retired, and raised my wife wanted 10 children, and we stopped at 4. She was a home mother and was really great, a wonderful person. She
Great.
passed away almost 10 years ago. She had breast cancer for 11 years.
Oh, dear.
And I married another woman about 6 years ago.
Okay.
And she lost her husband of cancer too. But she's a wonderful lady too.
Great. Well, Rich, thank you very much for participating in this. It's an amazing story that you have to tell. And I'm very glad that you participated in this effort for the United States. This is an ongoing program with the museum. If you're interested in participating, please call the museum. The telephone number is 630-773-3363. Thank you.
Thank you.